Chosen one, there comes a sacred moment in every divine journey when the noise fades, the masks fall, and heaven pulls back the curtain on who you truly are. You have walked through confusion, betrayal, rejection, and seasons of isolation, not because you were forgotten, but because you were being refined. What felt like loss was alignment. What felt like delay was divine design. Now, in this appointed hour, God is revealing your truth. Not the truth others projected onto you. Not the labels spoken over you. But the eternal identity written over your life before you ever took your first breath. God is revealing is your identity. And this revelation is shaking the very foundation of every lie that tried to shape you. For years, you may have questioned who you were. You may have adjusted yourself to fit into rooms that were too small for your calling. You may have silenced your voice to avoid conflict, dimmed your light to avoid jealousy, and lowered your standards to avoid loneliness. But none of those adjustments were ever a reflection of your true design. They were survival mechanisms in seasons where you had not yet fully understood your worth. God is now pulling back the layers. He is showing you that you were never meant to be a copy. You were crafted with intention. The way you think, the way you discern, the way you feel deeply, the way you notice what others overlook, these are not random traits. They are divine signatures. What people labeled as too sensitive was actually spiritual awareness. What they called stubborn was conviction. What they misunderstood as distance was discernment protecting your energy. Your identity was never flawed. It was simply uncommon. There were moments when you believed the negative words spoken over you. Words from authority figures, words from family, words from people you loved and trusted. Those words tried to root themselves in your spirit and define your internal narrative. You began to see yourself through the lens of criticism instead of through the lens of purpose. But God never agreed with those labels. Heaven never endorsed those accusations. The truth about you was written long before opinions were formed. The enemy attacked your self-image because identity is the foundation of destiny. If he could distort how you saw yourself, he could delay how you walked in your assignment. That is why your confidence was targeted. That is why comparison followed you. That is why insecurity tried to sit on your shoulders and whisper that you were behind, unqualified, or insignificant. But even in your doubt, something inside you refused to completely give up. That quiet resilience was evidence that your true identity was still alive beneath the confusion. God is revealing that you are not defined by your lowest moment. You are not defined by the mistake that embarrassed you, the relationship that broke you, or the opportunity that slipped away. Those were chapters, not conclusions. Your identity is rooted in calling, not in circumstance. You were chosen for depth, for impact, for influence that may not always be loud, but is always lasting. You carry a presence that shifts environments. Even when you tried to hide, people noticed you. Even when you stayed silent, your energy spoke. The reason you often felt out of place is because you were never designed to blend into systems that lack vision. You felt different because you are different. You sensed that you were meant for more, because you are meant for more. That dissatisfaction you felt with average living was not arrogance. It was destiny stirring within you. God placed eternity in your spirit, and temporary validation could never satisfy you. Now clarity is replacing confusion. You are beginning to see patterns in your life that point to divine orchestration. The doors that closed were not rejection, but redirection. The friendships that ended were not loss, but pruning. The delays that frustrated you were not denial, but development. Every season carved strength into your character. Every challenge refined your perspective. You were being shaped into someone who could carry weight without collapsing under pressure. As this truth settles in your heart, something shifts. You no longer chase approval. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You stand taller, not in arrogance, but in alignment. You speak with calm authority because you know who you are. You walk with quiet assurance because you understand that your value does not fluctuate based on external reactions. Chosen one, this revelation of identity is not just emotional healing, it is spiritual activation. When you know who you are, distractions lose their grip, manipulation loses its influence, fear loses its voice. You stop negotiating with doubt. You stop entertaining narratives that contradict your calling. You start making decisions from a place of worth instead of from a place of insecurity. God is revealing your truth so you can finally live from it, not striving to become someone else, not apologizing for existing, not minimizing your gifts, but embracing the fullness of who you were created to be. This is the end of identity confusion. This is the death of self-doubt. This is the awakening of divine awareness. You are not lost. You were being unveiled. You are not late. You were being aligned. You are not ordinary. You are appointed. And now that you see it, you cannot unsee it. Walk in it boldly. God is revealing is the reason for your isolation. And when you fully understand this, the pain of those lonely seasons will begin to make sense. There were times when it felt like everyone was moving forward while you were being pulled away. Relationships faded. Invitations stopped. Support grew quiet. You questioned what you did wrong. You wondered if you were too much or not enough. But your isolation was never evidence of rejection from God. It was evidence of selection. When God prepares someone for deeper purpose, He often reduces the noise around them, not to punish them, but to protect the process. You could not hear divine instruction clearly while surrounded by constant opinions. You could not fully step into discernment while constantly influenced by external validation. So heaven created space. It may have felt like loss, but it was sacred separation. There were people who could celebrate you at a certain level, but would have felt threatened at the next. There were conversations that would have distracted you from growth. There were environments that were comfortable, but not conducive to elevation. If God had allowed you to remain in those spaces, your potential might have been suffocated by familiarity. So He removed what felt stable in order to build what would be sustainable. In isolation, you met parts of yourself you had avoided. Without constant distraction, your thoughts became louder. Your fears surfaced. Your insecurities demanded attention. But that confrontation was necessary. Growth cannot happen in denial, in the quiet. You were forced to reflect. You examined your patterns. You recognized unhealthy attachments. You began to see where you had compromised your boundaries to maintain connection. Isolation exposed what business had hidden. There were nights when silence felt heavy. Days when scrolling through others' celebrations made you question your own timeline. Moments when you prayed and felt like the only voice in the room. But even in that stillness, something sacred was forming. Your dependence shifted. Instead of leaning on constant affirmation from others, you learned to anchor yourself in inner conviction. Instead of seeking applause, you sought alignment. God was strengthening your spiritual muscles. Just as physical muscles grow under tension, your faith expanded under pressure. You learned how to stand alone without collapsing. You learned how to trust your intuition. You learned that peace does not require a crowd. The loneliness you felt was not emptiness, it was expansion. Your capacity was increasing. Isolation also sharpened your discernment. When you are constantly surrounded by voices, it is easy to mistake noise for guidance. But in separation, you began to recognize the subtle whisper of wisdom within you. You became more selective. You stopped entertaining energy that drained you. You noticed red flags sooner. You realized that not every connection is covenant, and not every opportunity is assignment. Some people misinterpreted your distance as arrogance. Others assumed you changed. What they did not understand was that you were evolving. Growth often looks like withdrawal before it looks like expansion. A seed disappears into the soil before it breaks the surface. Your isolation was that underground season. Roots were developing where no one could see them. You were being detoxed from dependency on approval. There were times you would have tolerated disrespect just to avoid being alone. There were seasons when you would have overextended yourself just to feel needed. But in isolation, you discovered that your worth is not measured by how many people surround you. It is measured by the integrity you maintain when no one is watching. God also used isolation to recalibrate your focus. Distractions were removed so vision could become clear. Without constant social comparison, you began to hear your own dreams again. Without competing voices, your calling grew louder. The fog began to lift. You realized that you were never meant to run someone else's race. Your path required solitude, so your steps would not be influenced by imitation. Now, as God reveals this truth, regret begins to fade. You stop wishing certain people had stayed. You stop romanticizing past connections. You begin to see that if they were meant for the next level, they would have grown with you. Not everyone assigned to your introduction is assigned to your elevation. Chosen one, your isolation was divine strategy. It was not abandonment, it was alignment. It was not delay, it was development. You were hidden so you could heal. You were separated so you could strengthen. You were silenced so you could listen. And now, you are not the same person who first entered that lonely season. You are steadier, wiser, more discerning, more grounded. You no longer fear being alone, because you discovered that solitude is not emptiness when you are anchored in purpose. It is preparation. God is revealing that what felt like being set aside was actually being set apart. And now that you understand, you can step forward without bitterness, without confusion, and without apology. The isolation built you, and what it built cannot be shaken. God is revealing is your authority. And this revelation changes how you walk, how you speak, and how you respond to opposition. For a long time, you underestimated the weight of your presence. You did not see how your words carried impact. You did not recognize how your prayers shifted unseen battles. You thought you were just surviving, just trying to make it through each season. But heaven was training you for rulership in areas you once felt powerless. Authority is not something handed out casually. It is forged. It is tested. It is refined through resistance. The battles you faced were not random attacks. They were preparation grounds. Every time you stood back up after disappointment, you strengthened spiritual endurance. Every time you chose integrity over revenge, you sharpened your discipline. Every time you remained silent instead of reacting impulsively, you exercised control. You were being trained in ways you did not even recognize. There were moments you felt overwhelmed, as if the pressure was too much. But pressure reveals capacity. If the weight was placed on you, it is because you were built to carry it. The opposition that tried to intimidate you was evidence of influence resting on your life. The enemy does not fight what is insignificant. The resistance you experienced confirmed that your voice matters, your decisions matter, and your obedience matters. God is revealing that you were never meant to beg for access. You were never designed to shrink in rooms where your insight is needed. You were not created to constantly doubt your instincts. That inner nudge, that deep knowing you feel before something happens, that clarity that arrives before confirmation, those are signs of authority. You have been equipped with discernment that goes beyond surface appearances. In the past, you may have questioned yourself. You may have second-guessed decisions. You may have allowed louder personalities to override your quieter wisdom. But authority does not always shout. It often stands firm in calm confidence. Now you are learning to trust what God placed inside you. You no longer need constant reassurance before moving forward. You understand that obedience sometimes requires courage before comfort. Your authority also shows up in resilience. There were storms that should have broken you, but you remained standing. There were betrayals that could have hardened your heart, but you chose growth instead. There were setbacks that might have caused others to quit, but you kept going. That perseverance was not just survival, it was leadership being built within you. Leaders are not formed in ease, they are formed in endurance. God is revealing that your voice carries weight in the spirit realm. When you speak truth, confusion begins to clear. When you declare peace, anxiety loses its grip. When you pray with conviction, circumstances begin to shift. You may not always see immediate results, but do not underestimate unseen impact. Authority often works beneath the surface, before it becomes visible. There was a time when you felt small in comparison to others. You measured yourself against platforms, popularity, and public recognition. But true authority is not validated by applause. It is validated by alignment. You can walk into a room quietly and still change the atmosphere. You can offer one sentence of wisdom and redirect someone's entire path. Influence does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it moves strategically and silently. With this revelation comes responsibility. Authority requires discipline. It requires self-control. It requires humility. You are learning that power without character collapses, but power anchored in integrity expands. That is why your journey included correction, refinement, and deep self-awareness. God ensured that your character matured alongside your calling. You are no longer intimidated by opposition because you recognize it as confirmation. You are no longer shaken by criticism because you understand that not everyone will comprehend your assignment. You are no longer afraid to take up space because you know you were divinely positioned. Chosen one. This authority is not about dominance over people. It is about mastery over yourself. It is about walking in confidence without arrogance. It is about speaking truth without cruelty. It is about leading with wisdom instead of ego. You were trained in private so you could stand firm in public. You were tested in silence so you could speak with certainty. God is revealing that you were never fighting just to survive. You were being shaped to reign in areas where others shrink back. You were being prepared to make decisions that shift generational patterns. You were being strengthened to carry responsibility without fear. Now, as this truth settles in your spirit, you move differently. You no longer hesitate when clarity comes. You no longer shrink when called forward. You no longer doubt that you have what it takes. Authority has always been within you. It simply needed to be revealed. And now that you see it, you step into it with boldness and unwavering faith. God is revealing is the power of divine timing, and this revelation is healing every place where impatience once lived. There were seasons when you felt forgotten. You watched others step into opportunities you prayed for. You saw doors open for people who seemed less prepared. You questioned the delay. You wondered why your obedience did not produce immediate results. But what you could not see was the intricate alignment taking place behind the scenes. Divine timing is never accidental. It is intentional, precise, and protective. If certain blessings had arrived earlier, you might have mishandled them. If certain doors had opened before your character matured, the pressure inside those rooms could have crushed you. God was not withholding from you. He was building you. There were internal upgrades happening while you were focused on external outcomes. Timing required alignment in multiple dimensions. Not just your readiness, but the readiness of people connected to your destiny. Not just your desire, but the stability of the foundation beneath you. Some opportunities depend on unseen coordination. Conversations had to happen. Positions had to shift. Obstacles had to move. What felt like stillness was actually strategic movement in realms you could not access. You often interpreted waiting as stagnation. But waiting was strengthening your endurance. It was teaching you patience without bitterness. It was refining your motives. When something takes time, you begin to examine why you want it. You learn whether you seek it for validation or for purpose. In the waiting, your heart was purified. Your intentions were adjusted. Your focus became clearer. There were moments when you almost gave up. You considered settling. You thought about shrinking your vision to match your circumstances. But something within you would not allow it. That internal resistance was faith protecting your future. You were not being denied. You were being prepared for something greater than you initially imagined. God is revealing that delay is not rejection. Delay is often protection from premature exposure. There were environments you desired that were not yet stable enough to sustain you. There were responsibilities you prayed for that required stronger boundaries. There were platforms you envisioned that demanded thicker skin. The process of waiting was equipping you with resilience. Timing also required healing. If certain breakthroughs had arrived while you were still wounded, you might have sabotaged them unintentionally. Unhealed pain can distort perception. It can cause you to mistrust genuine support or overreact to minor challenges. So God slowed the pace. He allowed you to confront past disappointments. He guided you through forgiveness. He strengthened your emotional stability so that when success comes, you can steward it wisely. You are beginning to see that nothing was wasted. The quiet years built depth. The hidden seasons built humility. The overlooked moments built gratitude. Now, when doors open, you will not take them for granted. When opportunities arise, you will approach them with maturity. When recognition comes, you will remain grounded because you understand the journey it took to arrive there. Divine timing also shields you from comparison. Everyone's path unfolds differently because every assignment is unique. If your timeline mirrored someone else's, your growth might have been incomplete. God tailored your journey specifically for your calling. What seemed slow was actually precise calibration. Chosen one. This revelation changes how you view your past. You no longer resent the years that felt silent. You no longer replay missed chances with regret. You recognize that if it was meant for you in that season, it would have stayed. What left was not aligned. What delayed was not ready. What closed was not permanent. Now you sense momentum building. Not rushed, not chaotic, but steady and intentional. The same God who allowed the waiting is now orchestrating the acceleration. Because now you are steady enough to carry what is coming. You are disciplined enough to manage it. You are healed enough to enjoy it without fear. The unveiling of divine timing brings peace. You stop striving. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop chasing what is not aligned. You move with confidence, knowing that what belongs to you cannot be stolen, and what misses you was never meant to define you. Your breakthrough is not random. It is the result of preparation meeting appointed time. And when it arrives, you will realize that every delay made sense. Every pause had purpose. Every waiting season strengthened you for the weight of what you are about to receive. Chosen one. Trust the rhythm of your journey. The same God who authored your beginning has already secured your arrival. Timing is not working against you. It is working for you. And now, you are stepping into the moment that was always meant to be yours.